we're now going to discuss general formatting of the Marriott School resume. First of all, I would like to explain why we use this template. For instance, if you go on the internet and you search on resumes, you will find dozens and dozens of different resume formats. There's not an exact right way to do a resume. And you'll notice if you go online, sometimes on the BYU site, you'll see different versions and different iterations of the Marriott School template, and it has evolved as well. And that's all just fine. But for the purposes of our class and also to make sure we're all consistent, this is the resume that we're using. And I'll walk through a few things that I'd like just to point out and make sure everybody's clear on them. First of all, I want to talk about why we use the Marriott template, and that is you want to be associated with the Marriott School and the Marriott School brand. And since this is the template that the Marriott School has chosen, you want to be associated with that. There's nothing wrong with having a different format of a resume. I've seen other resumes that have different colors and graphic schemes on them. There's nothing wrong if you want to do that. But the problem is if you use that when you're interviewing for positions that are communicated or promoted through the Marriott School, then it looks like you really are different, that you're not quite part of the same group. It's important that you want to be associated with the Marriott School brand. And so for jobs and interviews or jobs and internships that you want to interview through the Marriott School, I definitely recommend that you continue to use the Marriott School template. A couple other things that I wanted to point out that you may notice on your feedback sheet. One thing is we want to make sure that our resume is a single page. Sometimes I see people doing 2-page resumes. That doesn't really work well. And if you have a 2-page resume, oftentimes you'll get screened out because you don't look like you're part of the Marriott School group. You'll notice that there's no colors, photos, logos, and other graphics on here. Some people like to they think they want to have their photo on their resume, that they feel like that's going to help to differentiate themselves and be noticed outside the crowd. Well, it's also a great way to get screened out. It can also, by putting a photo on your resume, it can also be a way that makes some recruiters uncomfortable because then they feel like they might be discriminating. So it's best to leave your photo out. If you want people to see your photo, obviously you're going to have a LinkedIn profile, and there your photo is there, and you can point recruiters to your LinkedIn profile. For example, in your cover letters that you include with your resume. That's the best way to handle that. But on your resume, I recommend that you do not have your photo on there. Also noted on your feedback sheet, it talks about no periods at the end of bullets. I just wanted to point that out because I see a lot of periods, and sometimes it's natural to put a period at the end of a sentence. But for this resume, we don't use periods at the end of the bullets. Also, you'll notice that the bullet points are lined up, left justified. Here, it's okay if you have a slight indent, but I've been seeing some indents that are quite wide. That takes away space where you can write, and it also breaks up the resume that it makes it a little harder to read. So for purposes of being consistent, I recommend that you just line up your bullets along the left side. It gives you more space to write, it looks clean, and it's easy to read. So that's it for this section. I encourage you to go on to the next section and look at the next few video segments. We'll go through each of these different segments in order.